A meeting of the Los Angeles City Council's Homelessness and Poverty Committee. My name is Marquise Harris Dawson, council member from the 8th District. I'm chairperson of this committee. I'm joined by our vice chair from the 7th District, council member Monica Rodriguez, and we're just joined by a council member from the 9th District, the one and only Kern Price. We start this meeting like we start many of our meetings with those of you who have submitted multiple comment cards. For those of you who've done that, you get a total of 2 minutes to speak about the various issues that you've submitted cards on. Can't quite make out a name. Oh, Herman, you have 4 agenda items and 1 general public comment card. So you can approach the desk and we will start the timer for 2 minutes.
That includes public comment? All right, houseboy, this is what you like to hear. Regarding affordable homeless housing, well, let's put it on the record. Accessible housing programs ensures that all people with disabilities have an equal opportunity along with their non-disabled peers to fucking rent, to fucking enjoy, and to fucking use affordable housing if there's any for anyone happen to be under HHH category, meaning that you're homeless for more than a year or even less than 8 months, you fucking assholes. What is accessible renting housing? They don't fucking know, because that's why half the population's homeless. And besides that, on all items I submit for the record, fuck you. Now my general public comments, you only have 2 fucking enjoyable minutes. I don't want to live anymore in LA. Sometimes all the time under HHH, I hear death knocking at my motherfucking door. I'm living every motherfucking day like a hustler, living with the motherfuckers of LA who know how I feel and know who I am and don't want to call me by my name. You white motherfucker. Fucked up. I'm broke. Yeah, I'm sitting on my porch thinking how time goes by and how stress-filled my fucked up day like yours is. But I love coming to LA to express myself under my First and 14th Amendment, because it's no big fucking joke as I stand here like Big Daddy Joe to tell you folks how to rock and roll. It's no cruel reality to what I see and what I hear other than HHH, fuck you too. And under the Bill of Rights and our First Amendments and our California constitutional rights, on behalf of every American citizen, and fuck DACA, I say to you, fuck LA, Herman Jason Wesson.
All right, Mr. Clerk, can you read item number 1 into the record?
Yes, sir. Item number 1 is a verbal status update from the City Attorney and the Department of City Planning relative to conversions of motels for affordable homeless housing. And item number 2 is a verbal status update from the Planning Department relative to the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance.
If our presenters are okay with it, Mr. Clerk, can you also read item number 2 into the record?
Yes.
So we can get a joint report.
Item 2, yes, sir. Item 2 is a verbal status update from the Planning Department relative to the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance.
Great. Good afternoon. Claire Bowen, Los Angeles Department of City Planning, and we're very pleased to be here in front of you today to introduce to you 2 ordinances that we've just recently released. These ordinances were prepared by our department really in response to the leadership of the City Council in developing the comprehensive homeless strategy, and also in response to really the overwhelming support we had from the voters in supporting measures HHH and H in this past year. So we have 2 ordinances. One is the Interim Motel Conversion Ordinance, and the other is Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance. We released the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance last Thursday for a 60-day public comment period, and we released the Interim Motel Conversion Ordinance today, but officially will go out tomorrow. But really both these ordinances are intended to remove barriers that might be currently in place, impeding the development of affordable housing, specifically for persons that are homeless. The permanent supportive housing ordinance is intended to kind of really streamline and facilitate the development of new construction projects that want to develop permanent supportive housing. And the interim motel conversion ordinance is really looking at existing motels, and it's a way of maybe for in a much shorter time frame, allowing the conversion of those motels for a kind of a shorter period of time, maybe say 10 to 15 years, under a contract to provide supportive housing. So it's really meant as a much more a quicker way of getting housing provided for folks that obviously are living on the streets today and not in housing. So these ordinances will be back in front of committee in the next couple of months. The intention is to release them for 60 days. They would then go to, during that time period, we'll be doing 2 staff public hearings, one on the 25th and one on the 28th of September. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing 5 kind of informational sessions around the city to allow constituents to be able to come and talk with us directly and learn a little bit more about what the intent of these ordinances are and really what permanent supportive housing and transitional and supportive housing is, and then again take it to Planning Commission in November with the intent of then passing it on to the committee and to the clerk's office at that point for consideration by the different council committees. So we want to move these very quickly. We think it's obviously very important and urgent issues. I'm joined here by Capri Maddox from the City Attorney's Office, if you have any other questions.
We're always happy to see Capri Maddox from the City Attorney's Office.
Delighted to be here. I don't think there's anything that I really need to add. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the support of the Planning Department and all the other departments that have been of assistance to us. Mr. Fuhrer created a roundtable to have individuals from various city departments to help facilitate an opportunity for more motel owners to participate in an existing county-funded program so we can have more affordable housing units in the city of Los Angeles. And as we all know, we have 35,000 people that are in need of housing. 25,000 of them are actually currently unsheltered. And so the more units we can get on board, the faster, the better. And I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have great partnership from a variety of city departments and your office, Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson. Just thank you so much for your partnership. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Members, questions? Mr. Price?
Just a quick question. Thank you, Capri, for your efforts in this. I know that you've been a real strong advocate. Tell us a little bit about this motel conversion program. I know you've been having some meetings. Did you get a lot of interest with folks that want to sell their properties or instead want to have programs in their properties? Kind of what's the focus of our efforts now? And give us an idea of how many properties we're talking about potentially that could be.
And I appreciate that question, Councilman. I know there will be an opportunity for us to have public sessions to come, but I do want to just give you an idea of the fact that the Apartment Owners Association of Greater Los Angeles approached the City Attorney's Office asking us to help them figure out ways to become a part of the solution when it comes to the housing crisis in the City of Los Angeles. Next, I just wanted to make it very clear that we are only facilitating, the City Attorney's Office is not making policy or anything, but we are only facilitating a resolution here regarding the homeless crisis. And your next question was how this was different if people were going to actually sell the properties or to rent.
What's the experience been so far? I mean, I know we're still.
So we have so far we have approximately 7 buildings that may be interested in participating with the program. In this program, they are working with Brilliant Corners, which is the service administrator for the County of Los Angeles.
Brilliant Corners?
Yes, it's a housing nonprofit, and they do great work. They have 2,000 affordable housing units in and around Los Angeles County. The other thing that I wanted to make clear, Councilman, is the fact that this program for the interim motel conversion ordinance, it's for a master lease program. And so a lot of the motel owners really weren't interested in selling their properties. Some of these properties have been in their families for 50 years. So they weren't interested in doing a sale. However, they were open to a 15-year lease, 3-year to 15-year lease. And when you need affordable housing quickly, that's an option that we want to make sure that is available.
And was the city attorney also looking at those nuisance properties, those motels that are functioning as something else and really need to just be closed down? Or
we are aware that some motels do create and attract nuisance. And as a former neighborhood prosecutor, I dealt with those issues on a regular basis. However, we are not targeting any motels. We are merely presenting the option, and motel owners can apply. So we are not targeting, and we actually can't because, we are, we have enforcement obligations as it relates to problem motels, so we very well wouldn't try to steer them into a program. But the program is on board, and we do have some motels that were formerly nuisance locations that I happen to know from my neighborhood prosecutor days that have showed interest in the program, but we're not targeting nuisance motels directly. I want to be very clear about that.
But if we do identify a nuisance motel, we should bring it to city attorney's attention or code
Just
enforcement?
any motel that is interested in this program is not going to be run or operated by the city attorney's office. Again, it's a county-funded program under the Housing for Health format over at LA County. So if you have someone that's interested in the program, you can very easily direct them to LA County, and we'll be certain to give you that information, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
And for this motel program, just to be clear, is it just strictly like an interim voucher solution that the intended use?
Yes. So when you say
So like a temporary stay for those that we're
looking at it being a permanent supportive housing option with kitchenettes added into the units in most cases. There may be some instances where a motel won't have enough square footage for them to add a kitchenette, where that could be an interim housing option. Brilliant Corners, the service provider for LA County, does have some units that they use specifically for interim housing. However, the goal here, as Claire Bowen from Planning mentioned, is to create permanent supportive housing options.
And so it also makes the accommodation to put on-site services at
Yes.
these facilities?
And I think that is going to be a game changer. You'll have someone there on site around the clock that will be able to inform people you need to take your medication, you need to go to counseling, you need to go to fill out a job application, et cetera. And so we're looking forward to just not create an opportunity where you're merely housing people, but you're helping people change their lives.
Right. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was with Claire Bowen again from City Planning. That's really just kind of a key to both of these ordinances, both permanent supportive housing and the interim motels. They really do include the supportive housing. Maybe just to clarify, in the interim motel control conversion ordinance, as Capri was mentioning, it's really going to be a master lease for about 10 to 15 years at Brilliant Corners. So it doesn't have, kind of the 55 years. It's not as permanent as the permanent supportive housing. It's really meant as kind of more of this interim, but it might include both transitional housing in the units where they're not able to put a kitchen, and then actually more of a supportive housing environment where we are able to, or where Brilliant Corners is able to include some kind of kitchenette for somebody. Somebody could be moving in and being able to stay for a number of years.
So my question is, because in looking at the draft ordinance and the way that it's written right now, why would we consider having off-site support in terms of the service providers written in that it's an option of being on-site or off-site if we're looking to create and we're constructing permanent supportive housing, and yet we'll make that accommodation as it relates to the motel ordinance?
So I guess there's a couple of questions there that I think that what we're hearing from the service providers is you really want to provide them flexibility, because it varies depending on the service. As some services can be off-site and others can be on-site. I think with the permanent supportive housing, typically there is more of an opportunity because you are typically building new, so it's easier to be able to sometimes build, case manager worker spaces, into those buildings. In the motel situation, it might not always be feasible to include, in order to be able to include places for the supportive service, you might mean deciding to have one or two less units. You're able to house one or two less people. So again, depending on the different population that may be proposed to live in that particular facility, that they might determine that given perhaps if there's a proximity of a certain amount of services nearby, that it might make sense in that case to have the services, off-site.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my concern is that if we're drafting this ordinance and we're constructing it, that we should be creating the accommodations to be able to provide that support, because that's truly what these families need if they're going to be residing there, is they need that on-site service. So I just want to make sure that there's consideration to that part of the conversation, because that's what we talked about when we talk about permanent supportive housing, is having the on-site services. So when we say proximity, I don't know what that means, particularly for, families that are going to be relying very heavily on these support services. And so it's not all equal, and these are, it's all relative. So I just want to make sure that we're really explicit about that, because when we have this conversation, for me, it was about providing it on site. And I can understand how challenging that might be, but the reality is that was the commitment that was made. So
Great. That's really great feedback, and we can take a look at that as we're moving this forward. And one of the things I should also emphasize, especially on the motel conversion ordinance, is that they have to provide, they are under contract, so that contract will then also specify the extent of the services. So that contract will also be able to, so for some reason it's not on-site, the contract would specify those.
And Councilwoman, for motel conversion, you actually have a comment, many opportunities to comment and to weigh in, because it's going to go, it will be going to Plum, as well as the full city council.
No,
And we look
I'm going to take my opportunities every chance I get.
That's fine, that's fine. It's good to know.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, we
Thank you very
appreciate
much
it.
for that. We
Sure.
appreciate you.
I have one more, actually, because the other comment I just wanted to make, just in terms of design, and I was having this conversation with my colleague just a moment earlier, when we talk about the quality of design, that's very important to how we are enabled to actually continue to build the community support that is so important to us assuring that we will be able to construct this housing going forward.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we never really give up the opportunity, to really be thoughtful about the design guidelines that are very important to, particularly in my district, in my office, where I think sometimes we need to make sure that just because it's affordable doesn't mean that it doesn't have quality design.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we set an appropriate standard for that in that conversation, and allowing the council office to be involved in that conversation.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. I think that concludes these two items. We'll hold those on the desk, and thank both of you for your great presentation, and look forward to working with you on both of these items in the months ahead.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members.
Item number 3.
Yes, sir. Item number 3 is a motion by Council Members O'Farrell and Wizar relative to the implementation and staffing of the homeless outreach and proactive engagement teams and the Clean Street Initiative. This item is also referred to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee. We have 2 cards on this item.
Thank you. We have staff from personnel, LAPD, and going once. Did they leave? Huh?
I think so, sir. They have 2
Well, we have 3. We have 2 speaker cards, but I was going to take those after we hear from staff.
What's that addition do?
Let's see what you have to say, and then we'll decide.
Good afternoon, Adel Hash Khalil, Assistant General Manager, LA Sanitation. The specific question is about the staffing for the HOPE teams. And as you know, we have 4 HOPE teams across the city, broken by bureaus, LAPD bureaus. And each HOPE team has a sanitation cleanup team consisting of 2 environmental compliance inspectors, 1 trash truck driver, and a maintenance laborer. One of the issues that we had is getting the resources and staff to staff those. However, we were able to, as we committed to you and getting the staff in place, we actually started in January of this year. We moved staff from other programs to staff the HOPE teams. So, and we were rolling the HOPE team staffing every 2 weeks. So usually early, I think, March, we had all 4 teams staffed up. However, we were working with personnel to fill the vacancies that we had, and the exam took a while to get the exam. The good news is 3 weeks ago we hired close to 14 inspectors. They came in, and they're already in our offices. They're being trained, and those should be deployed soon. But we were able to move staff around to staff the resources needed to support the HOPE teams. And that's what we have in place. So good news, we're able to work through it and get that. And we will need to continue filling because we are always having vacancies and we need to continue filling the positions.
Excellent questions. Mr. Price?
So how many HOPE teams are there then, citywide?
Citywide right now, there is 4 HOPE teams, and those are broken up by Valley Bureau, Central Bureau, West Bureau, and South Bureau.
Right.
And the HOPE team has 10 LAPD officers and 1 what we call rapid response team, which is a cleanup team from sanitation. And, you know, you can right away see there's a lot more police than cleanup, so we need to have more people in the cleanup. So that's something we need to continue working on. In your budget for this year, you authorize us to add 2 additional rapid response teams to work with LAPD and us to support these HOPE teams. Those have 6-month funding, so those should be in place starting in January. They will augment the 4 teams, and 1 is focused on a citywide operation, and mainly in the corridors that have high potential of homeless encampments and illegal dumping. In the same area, the other HOPE team will be focused on the LA River and its tributaries that will be focused on. So those 2 teams will be added come January. And since we have the new staff, we should be able to mobilize immediately and add those 2 additional, what we call rapid response teams, part of the HOPE team.
Yeah,
so we're not adding LAPD, we're adding cleanup teams.
Right. Well, I just hope we can even expand that because with only 4 teams, you know, you can do the math and you know, South LA, it comes around every, you know, 3 or 4 weeks. There's some action someplace in the area. That's just not enough. We just need more consistent, more responsive support.
It's you know, we have the Clean Streets LA team that's doing cleanup across the city, and most of the cleanup is being done on homeless encampments, and we're doing a good job on how we are grouping the cleanup and using more efficiency to do more. But I agree with you. It's the rapid response are critical, and we need resources and staffing to do that. I know LAPD feels the same way. They have 5 units. Each HOPE team has basically 10 officers. We have 1 unit, so 5 units, 1 unit. And most of the time, they need the cleanup team to be with them to be effective. So I think we need to continue the dialogue through the budget process with the mayor's office and your committee and the budget committee to figure out how we can start gradually augmenting this. And it will put some recommendations in our sanitation budget, hopefully, for you to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Thank you so much. Mr. Clerk, we have a couple speaker cards, and then I think we've submitted some instructions on this matter. General Dogon and Pete White for 1 minute each.
Good evening, General Dogon, Human and Civil Rights Organizer with LA CAN. The city's HOPE outreach team is just like Project HOPE, which was the plan to house homeless folks on Skid Row. Jose Huizar, remember that. It was a total failure. The HOPE team is a failure as well because they like Jesus. You never see them. And when you do see them, it's all false hope, right? They don't deliver the reality or the needs that homeless folks need, which is housing, right? Everybody know where they can go get a fish kit from, and people, when the police come 10 deep, you know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody gonna want to get no services or get nothing from them. Post Triple H, the only thing the city has shown to voters and taxpayers of Triple H is what they have done to address the homeless crisis is to criminalize it. Since the passing of Triple H, LAPD enforcement of the homeless has greatly increased to terrorist levels. 48% arrest increase, and citations have skyrocketed to 78% increase. The city's efforts to do homeless outreach will never be successful until you stop the criminalization.
Thank you.
Since the LAPD left, I'll tell you why they left. On August 22nd, the Board of Police Commissioners received the LAPD second quarter report on homelessness and mental illness. It behooves members of this committee to read that report if you have not done so already. For example, LAPD reported that HOPE teams contacted 7,610 houseless people. Of those, 1,647 were referred to housing, and of that number, unfortunately, only 298 individuals accepted the various forms of housing offered. What exactly does various forms of housing mean? That's a question that was asked repeatedly by Commissioner McLean-Hill with no real response until the LAPD confessed that this was not their data at all. So LAPD hoped the readers of this report believe that in the worst housing crisis Los Angeles has ever witnessed, only 4% of all individuals contacted accepted housing, 44 refused placement efforts altogether, and that 35% accepted referrals other than housing. At the same time, arrests are up 49%, LAPD's data, and they say the increase does not necessarily represent an actual increase in arrests, but is indicative of improved coding. We're saying criminalization is still going on. Read the second quarter report from August 22nd. It's all there.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, we have a few instructions.
Yes, sir. Is it the intent of the committee to approve the motion with the following amendments? The first amendment is to add instruction number 1 that the status report should include measurements that describe the results of HOPE team interventions pertaining to the following: outreach, engagement, services, housing, arrests, and source of referral to intervention site. And the second amendment is to instruct the CAO and the city's homeless coordinator to report on the funding needs and options to ensure continued LASA support of the city's HOPE teams.
Thank you. So we will approve that item if there's no objection. Excellent. Moving on to item number 4.
Yes, item number 4 is Los Angeles Economic and Workforce Development Department and Workforce Development Board joint report relative to the additional Measure H funding from the County of Los Angeles for the expansion of the Los Angeles Regional Initiative for Social Enterprise to provide transitional employment to individuals experiencing homelessness.
And we can take this item on consent if there's no discussion, members. Excellent. So that'll be the order.
Yes, sir.
Item number 5.
Item number 5 is the Homeless Strategy Committee report relative to the city's application to the county for a $70,000 planning grant to prevent and combat homelessness.
Excellent. I believe we have a Homeless Strategy Committee report. Ms. Barclay.
Good afternoon. Meg Barclay, City Homeless Coordinator in the Office of the CAO. When Measure H funding recommendations were approved by the County Board of Supervisors in June, an additional $1.5 million of county general funds was actually identified to make planning grants available to cities related to plans to new plans or to expand and expand or enhance existing plans. The RFP was released for these grants was released on September 28th. The maximum award the city is eligible for is $70,000, and applications are due on September 18th. We are proposing to apply to the county for the maximum award available to engage a consultant to review our comprehensive homeless strategy and make any recommendations that might be applicable or appropriate in response to a lot of the changes that have happened since the city's homeless strategy was adopted in 2016. For example, the homeless count increase this last year of 20%, The fact that city service funding has largely been taken over, and in certain categories has been taken over by Measure H funding, and so that sort of changes the dynamic. City Proposition HHH implementation and other efforts the city is making that you heard about earlier today towards encouraging and supporting faster development of permanent supportive housing. So we're requesting authority to apply for $70,000 for these services, to review the 62 active city strategies and recommend amendments to ensure that our strategy is effective and efficient in response to these new circumstances. According to the timeline laid out in the RFP, the county will announce the awards no later than October 30th, and they would expect to start negotiating contracts in November. They've also said that they would like plans to be completed by March 2018 with potential 3-month extension, but that's a very quick turnaround. And so in order to meet those timelines, we're requesting, this report also requests authorization to identify and negotiate and execute a contract with a consultant. The amendment that was made in the Homeless Strategy Committee expands the options for identifying a consultant either off of a pre-qualified list of planning and research firms the city may already have, or looking at potential sole source or other procurement methods to identify a consultant to do this on this very expedited timeline. So that's the recommendation from the Homeless Strategy Committee on this matter, and we request approval.
Thank you. When is the grant due?
The applications are due the 18th of September.
So in a week and a half or two.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Price?
None at this time. Sounds like it's rolling.
Sure, you don't have much time.
Luckily, the application itself is attached. It's pretty straightforward, so hopefully we'll be
And
able
so the
to.
recommendations that, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, but the recommendations that you're hoping for would help potentially avail us of more competitive opportunities for funding?
Potentially, it could include like a review of other funding sources that are out there, how we're spending the money that we have in response to these changed conditions, maybe how we might look to focus our efforts. 62 actives is a lot, so been getting an opportunity now that we have 18 months of implementation under our belt to look again with some fresh eyes. It seemed like an opportunity to take.
Excellent. All right, we have a couple of instructions. One of them is that we ask you, the coordinator, to notify the council and this committee as to whether or not the grant is awarded. And then the next instruction has to do with consulting city departments, including the CLA and LASA, to identify specific strategies within the CHS to develop a scope of work for the consultant to address in the planning grant.
Okay.
And with those instructions, this motion will be deemed approved.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one public comment card, Mr. Christopher Newton.
Hi, my name is Christopher Newton. I just wanted to give some comments about maybe different statistics. We all know that there's a large number of African American people that are homeless. If you look in Skid Row, you can see it's more than 50%. I just want to say, it kind of begs the question, why? Is there a lack of job training in the African community? Are there larger drug addictions in the African community? All of these questions are basic questions. The problem is that if the answer to any of them is yes, especially say job training, it's disparaging. And so I ask that when you guys are considering these things that you're considering, you look at the communities that are largely affected. I also wanted to speak quickly on behalf of the LGBT community. There's rampant discrimination in the services against LGBT community members in shelters and emergency shelters and things like that. Has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes and exhausts our public comment cards. Is there any other business?
The desk is clear, sir.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you so much.